Today is June 26, 2024. My name is Melissa Ackerman, and I have the pleasure of interviewing Lisa Genecov today. Hey Lisa, how are you today?
Fine, Melissa. How are you?
I'm great. Can you tell me about your family, your parents and grandparents, where and when you were born? You don't have to tell me when, but
Sure.
where you were born, and just let's start with that.
Sure. Well, I grew up in McAllen, Texas, and my dad was from Houston, and my mom was from St. Charles, Missouri, and they met at the University of Texas. Both of my parents were first-generation Americans, and their families both were from Eastern Europe. I believe my mom's family was from Lithuania, and my dad's family was from Poland, Russia, Belarusia area, because the borders were always changing around then. And both sets of families left to escape the pogroms and came to the United States through Ellis Island. By virtue of, well, my dad's family had 5 brothers who all came over at different times and all settled in Houston. And my mom's family all settled in St. Charles. Some of them now live in St. Louis, but so they met at the University of Texas, and they were on a double date and not each other's dates at school, and their next date was with each other.
Okay.
And they got married about 6 months later, and Dad had been in the Navy and then on the GI Bill went to the University of Texas, and so he was able to use some of his college credit for law school and went to the University of Texas Law School as well. They wanted to settle in Houston, and my mom decided she didn't like Houston, and it was really hard for my dad, being Jewish, to get the kind of job that he wanted in Houston at the time in 1950, which happened to a number of people who were Jewish. And so they had friends from college that were from McAllen, 2 couples. And they were very close to both of them, and Mom really wanted to raise her children with their families. And so Dad and Mom packed up my brother, who was an infant, and their belongings, and drove down to the valley from Houston. And along the way, Dad would stop, when he got to, South Texas, he'd stop, off the highway if he saw like an attorney sign, just to talk about, what legal issues people down in the valley had and that kind of thing. And when they got to McAllen, he looked for a job, and none of the law firms were hiring. So he literally...
Hiring anybody or hiring somebody
anyone.
who's Jewish? Okay.
It really was pretty blue sky in terms of the ability to get a job if their jobs were to be had. But he hung a shingle and got on all of the insurance plans and became the litigator in South Texas, from my understanding, in about 2 years. And after that, he got a job at the larger firm, which probably had about 6 or 10 people, I'm not sure, but it was, even though it was small, it was a reputable firm. And he met Lloyd Benson Jr., who worked at that firm, and he met Wade Spillman, who went on to the Texas legislature. They were both from the Rio Grande Valley and introduced Dad to a lot of people. And
was your dad involved in politics at all?
He did end up getting involved in politics through Lloyd Benson, and for decades after that. And Lloyd at the time was a practicing lawyer, but soon after went to Congress, and then the Senate, of course, and then Secretary of Treasury. But so it was very interesting. In 1948, they had built the synagogue, the temple, in McAllen. Both McAllen and Brownsville had temples down in the Rio Grande Valley. Harlingen did not. I never really understood why. I guess not enough people. But so the bottom line was, Mom and Dad got there 2 years later, and they still didn't have a rabbi. So they, the men, would switch off giving the sermons. And so apparently when Dad gave the sermon, he was such a good orator that a lot of non-Jewish people heard about it, and they wanted to know the next time Dad was giving a sermon. And so a number of times non-Jewish people would come to temple to hear Dad speak.
Bringing in the crowds.
Yeah.
So how large was the Jewish population?
There were at least 100 families. There was a directory. I used to sell Girl Scout cookies to the whole Jewish community who lived sort of, in the northern part of town.
Yeah.
And it grew from there. There's still a really nice number of Jewish people there, and they have a relatively new temple that was built. Well, maybe it was even more than 15 years ago. But
It's a reform.
It's reform. There's also a Chabad there now.
There's a Chabad everywhere.
And there's a Chabad on Padre Island also.
Is that really?
There is.
Okay.
And they've been there longer than the Chabad in McAllen.
Okay. Were you involved in organized Jewish activities when you were growing up, BBYO or Temple Youth or anything?
Yeah, well, before high school, for us, the central address was the temple. And in third grade, my friends and I were in the choir, and we
have
just
a
kind of
religious
hung
school?
out. Yes, there's a religious school. I wanted to have a bat mitzvah so badly, and very few of the girls at that point had bat mitzvahs. One or two of my friends were having one, and my mother grew up Orthodox, and she didn't think girls should have bat mitzvahs. And I begged and I pleaded and I begged and I pleaded, and finally 3 months before my 13th birthday, she said, "Okay, but you're going to read the Torah and the Haftorah and the whole thing."
Okay.
And I did.
Did you do it?
Yes. So that was awesome. In high school, there was a BBYO chapter that Brownsville and McAllen were part of. McAllen, we were all part of the same chapter, but McAllen and Brownsville had their separate meetings because we were 60 miles away.
Right.
But, once, I think a month or every other month, we'd have meetings together, alternating cities for the weekend.
Do you have any brothers or sisters?
I have one brother and 2 sisters. We were all in BBYO, and it was just a really big deal for us because that was a real big Jewish connection for us.
Where do you fall within the 4 kids?
I am the baby.
The baby, okay. And where are your siblings living now?
I have a brother in Houston. I have a sister in Sugar Land. I have another sister who lived in California for a really long time, and when my dad got sick, which was around 2010, we asked her to move back to McAllen to just sort of help out and be eyes and ears on the ground because none of us lived in McAllen. And she said yes. And so I think it was around maybe 2013 that she moved down there.
Okay.
And she's still living there.
And your mother?
My mother passed away in 2018.
Okay. Okay. Did your mother work outside the home when you were growing up?
No, she was a full-time stay-at-home mom, very active. Both my parents were very active in civic things. They were also both very active in the temple. Dad was president of the temple at one point. Mom ran the sisterhood at one point. And, up until, the time that she got sick, which was about a month and a half before she passed, she was still involved in the temple stuff.
That's great. So that was a very important part of your lives.
It really was.
So you grew up and you went to religious school, and where'd you end up going to college?
I went to college at Stanford, one of the first people from McAllen to go to Stanford, and it was a great thing for me to do. I really wanted to, have experiences and just be away from Texas, really, and just, figure out, the kind of person I wanted to be, and also, study well and work hard and ultimately go to law school. I knew at that point I wanted to go.
What was your undergraduate degree in?
In human biology, actually.
Whoa, okay. All right.
It was fairly new at Stanford. It was started with a Ford Foundation grant, and the premise of it was mixing the social sciences and the biological sciences with a core group of classes. The idea was to teach people who ultimately might make policy or, be decision makers to understand things about, like, think recombinant DNA and the ethical implications, or think COVID and how policy and the biological sciences impact humans.
Were you ever thinking of going to medical school?
For a red hot minute, like a day.
Yeah.
But human biology, a lot of people studied human biology, then they designed their core group of classes as their major, and mine was in health policy.
Okay. And you stayed at Stanford for law school, or did you go
No. I came back. California at that point was in a recession, and UT was almost free, so that's what I did. I went to UT.
Okay. And then how did you end up in Dallas?
I I ended up in Dallas because a lot of people from UT who were from Texas either went to Houston, Dallas, or San Antonio, or if you were really lucky, you got a job in Austin, but there were very few jobs in Austin at the time.
When did you graduate law school?
1984.
Okay. And so you came up here and started working in the area that you had been interested in?
Well, I started out in corporate and M&A because I was very interested in business law at that point, you know, through my clerkships and internships and that type of thing. And well into, I'd say after about 8 years of doing that, you know, lots of big deals and that kind of thing, IPOs, you know, initial public offerings, I started working with some healthcare lawyers, some regulatory lawyers, and I realized, and they needed M&A help because at that point the regulations, there were certain regulations that were rescinded that allowed doctors to invest in entities that they had and like labs and all sorts of things, and they could refer to them. So they were kind of referring to themselves.
Yeah.
And the government didn't like that, and so the healthcare markets were kind of thrown off course, and they had to sell a lot of businesses, or at least sell the doctor's interest in the businesses. And because I was a transactional lawyer, I did a lot of those deals, and I realized that I really liked working with doctors and I liked working with hospitals.
Okay.
And so I did that full-time for 30 years, over 30 years.
Okay. Let's go back a little bit. When you were a child, did you have any hobbies when you were growing up?
I read a lot. I was kind of nerdy when I was younger, and then starting in middle school, I liked boys, and really my hobbies were get good grades. I danced. I did ballet and jazz and drill team.
Okay. And did you go to public high school or
Everything was public except for the Catholic schools.
Okay. So.
So yes.
Yes.
I did not go to Catholic school.
No, you didn't. So you moved up here. You were working. How did you meet your husband?
We met first in BBYO because of the regional conventions and the district conventions that they had. And Jeff was a friend of a guy that I liked when I was a dorm leader at district convention. And so we were friends of friends. And so, you know, when I was in Austin, maybe before I had to go back to school, I would see Jeff, I'd run into him and that kind of thing. But I don't know if did you ever go to any of George Bramnick's Jewish singles parties?
I heard about them.
Right, okay. Well, George put on great parties, and it was supposed to be very exclusive. He kept a list of all the Jewish singles, and he had these parties at really great clubs, you know, the hot clubs that everybody wanted to go to, Tango, Rio, and I forget the others. They all ended in O. Anyway, so I went to one, and I ran into Jeff, and he was actually with his sister and Susan Bazette at the time. And so we saw each other, and he asked me out, and we started dating.
About what year was that?
That was, I think it was 86, like the fall of 86, when we ran into each other. I moved here in 84, 85. And, excuse me. And so we went out for a little while, and then I decided that I just didn't want to be serious with anyone for a little bit. So we broke up, and then he didn't call me for like 3 months. And he'd gone on this big trip with his family to London. And so I decided I was just going to call him and say hello. And we started dating again. And when we started dating, that was in 87, early 87. And at that point, we started dating exclusively pretty soon after that. And we dated for a little over a year and a half, and then got engaged.
And you got married in McAllen?
We got married, got married in Dallas on April 1st, 1989.
No April fooling?
No, it had something to do with after a certain Jewish holiday, you couldn't get married for 40 days. Yeah, and I wanted to get married in the synagogue on a Saturday night after, you know, the third star came out. So that was the last Saturday night for 40 days. So that's when we got married.
Okay, and I know you've been involved in some different organizations since you've been here. You want to tell me a little bit about what you've enjoyed doing?
Jewish and non-Jewish.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, the one of the biggest things I've been involved in is the Jewish Federation, and when it was a large community board, I probably served on it for, I know, over 10 years. And then the board was reconfigured to be more of a working board, smaller, and so I didn't serve on it for a little while. And then in 2012, I was asked to be on the board again. And then asked to be an officer. So from 2012 to almost 2019, again, I was on the board, and for at least 4 of those years, I was an officer. And so that was really rewarding. I really enjoyed that. And there were 2 other organizations that I spent a lot of time with. One was, along with 49 other women, we founded the Center for Women at Law at the University of Texas. And that was an organization that was housed at UT, and the UT Foundation, Texas Law Foundation, helped support it for several years and still does a little bit. And the purpose of the organization is to help women elevate in the profession. And we put on programs, and it's also a networking organization, and I've been involved in that since 2009 and also helped found it, and I'm one of the past presidents.
Oh, great.
So spent a lot of time with that, and it's really rewarding because I've done a lot of mentoring for younger women.
Have you seen a big change in the law industry as far as women being able to move forward?
Well, since I started practicing 40 years ago, for sure, there are a lot of women, particularly who have become partners in law firms, a lot of women who have become general counsel and deputy general counsel.
That wasn't the case when you were coming up?
Interestingly, women tended to succeed faster in corporate work, in corporate law, working for corporations. But ultimately, law firms wanted to look like, their clients, so that they could, get the work from women and show that they were hiring women and elevating women. So, and I'd like to think we had something to do with that, just with respect to, the kind of influence that we were able to give. But I will tell you that people like Barbara Lynn, Harriet Myers, and others really had a lot to do with it because they were some of the first women going to work in the law
Paved
firms.
the way. You were going to say about, I think, another
One more organization, the ABA Health Law Section, the American Bar Association. They have huge sections like litigation and corporate, and then the health law section was one of the younger sections. It was started 25 years ago, but I got involved in the early 2000s. The incoming president was a guy named Tony Patterson, and he officed a floor above us at Norton Rose, and I was at Lock Lord, and so I called him and said, Tony, I really want to get involved in the section. And he goes, okay, I'm going to make you the vice president of this group, and I want you to start up this other group, and I want you to reinvigorate, this one conference. And immediately I was just thrown into the health law section. I ended up serving on the council years later, which is like their board of the section. And it was just, I have friends, literally I made good friends all over the country who are healthcare lawyers. And it's really helped my practice because, we sent business to each other, and we just helped out our clients if they had business in other cities. So it really, I really enjoyed all 3 of those organizations.
That's great. So do you have any children?
I have 2. And a boy and a girl, a young man, Adam, who's 33, and Becca, who is 31, our daughter, and they're both really awesome.
And where does Adam live?
Adam lives near Stanford in Redwood City.
And what does he do?
And he is a mechanical engineer. When he started out of grad school, mechanical engineering grad school, he went to Southern California to work for Elon Musk at SpaceX. So he's in aeronautics and actually aerospace. And then he took another job in Denver, excuse me, in aerospace. And then he moved back to California for a girl, and he married her. Her name is Bree.
And where's she from?
She is from Atlanta, Bree Stein at Genecov, and they just had a baby a month ago.
And what?
And
what is
they
the
had
baby's
a baby
name?
boy named Miles Lee Stein Genecov, and he's adorable.
Oh, okay. I bet he is.
And he's just a doll. We're going to go visit him again this coming week.
Okay.
And Becca.
Tell me about what Becca does.
Becca has the job that everyone on earth wants. She runs the social media group, social media department for the Dallas Mavericks. She went to all the playoff games and all the finals games this past year. You know, she's going to look back on this incredible job and say, I really had a big life.
Does she enjoy all that?
Oh, yeah, she loves it. She's really good at it. And she sends us selfies all the time with, this past time it was Shaq, Kyrie Irving, you know, all the different players. She's, you know, she's known throughout the NBA really well respected. She brought their fan engagement numbers throughout the NBA down from 27 to number 4, and which is a big deal.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it really is.
And so are your kids involved in Jewish activities?
You know, yes, I want to say Adam was particularly in college. He's been busier just, you know, getting married and having a baby.
Yeah.
and
time
working.
consuming, yes.
And Becca, I want to say she is part of the Jewish affinity group at the Mavs. And
there is a Jewish affinity group.
there
at
is.
the
Well,
Mavs?
they've got lots of affinity
great.
groups, but there is one. And she's, you know, just been a good contact for a lot of Jewish people at the Mavs, you know, from a outward standpoint.
Well, you're married into a family that is a well-known Dallas family that knows a million people and have a lot of connections and just have a very wide reach, so that's nice.
Well, thank you. Well, Jeff and I both came from families that were very community-oriented, both religiously and civically, and so he and I both felt an obligation to give back to both sets of communities, you know, to be busy and do pay it forward. And our kids saw that, and so we're both really proud of our kids. You know, one of the questions you're probably going to ask me is, you know, who are my role models?
I was getting ready to come to that.
And of course, growing up and being a young adult, it's always been my parents, and now it's really my kids. You know, for me, I'm just so proud of them and what they do, and they just, you know, they do good things in their communities, and they're just good people.
That's very important. How's the Dallas Jewish community changed since you moved up here? What, 30 some odd years ago?
It's been almost 38 years. It's changed a lot. A lot of people, even when I moved here, lived close to the JCC. You know, that was kind of like the Jewish community, and then it kept moving further north, and you know, a lot of people moved to Plano, and now people are scattered all over. And so I remember when Anshe Torah, you know, started, and a lot of families, you know, moved up north, and there was a great need for a synagogue up there. And now it's like, of course there's a synagogue up there. You know, there's a lot of Jews up there.
Right.
Way further. So that's one thing. The other thing is that Dallas has just grown since then. You know, maybe, I don't know how many Jews were here, but now it's over 70,000, I think.
It was like 30,000
yeah,
forever.
Something. And then when I was on the board at the first time of the Federation, it was like 50,000, and they did a study about what Jews want. You know, they're always doing studies about what are the needs of the Jewish community, and so it's just really grown, and just lots of people from all over have moved in, and I think it's more diverse Jewish population, which I think is more interesting, and which creates obviously more needs for the community. A lot of different day schools now, whereas there were only a couple. And it's just a much more robust Jewish community, I think.
I don't think I asked you, what, were you members of a synagogue here?
Yes, I mean, Jeff's family, they were members of Shereth Israel, and so we went to Shereth Israel.
Mm-hmm.
His dad had been the president, and everybody was involved. Julie and her family went to Anshe because they lived further north.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, we are members of both Temple and Shereth,
Okay.
and that works for us,
Mm-hmm.
and that's good.
Where'd your kids end up going to Sunday school?
They went to Shereth.
Sheriff.
We weren't at part of Temple yet.
Oh, okay. All right. So, are there any other things that you might want to tell me that I didn't ask about?
Oh, gosh. It's very different growing up in the Valley, being a South Texas border Jew.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there weren't that many of us, and, you know, the fact was that the people that I hung out with, I mean, Judaism was important to us. You know, I think our parents instilled it in us, and we were very close. There were only, in my class, 2 other Jews my age, and so we were close to the kids a little older than us. We were close to the kids a little younger than us, because there just weren't that many
Right.
Jews.
Uh-huh.
So one of the first things I did was, when I got to Dallas, was, you know, go to the Federation and figure out a way that I can get connected.
Mm-hmm.
And then I kind of was surfing temples and synagogues while I was single to see where I thought I fit in.
Mm-hmm.
And then I married Jeff.
Who knows everybody?
Right.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with me. I've really enjoyed visiting with you. Thank you, Lisa.
Well, thank you so much. It was fun.